welcome to Brothers on the Board, the podcast where we become better teachers together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brothers on the Board. It's been a few minutes. We've been away for a couple of weeks, vacation, but we're back. It was fun on a boat, cruise ship, carnival. You know the deal. Eating way more than you should, spending way more than you should.
So much food. There was so much food.
So much food. But now it's back to reality.
Yes.
And we'll be having an episode coming up soon talking about vacations in the very, very immediate future. But for now, today's episode is all about sleeping, which, to be honest, is something that I have been doing very poorly since we got back. It's been miserable.
Oh, dude, my sleep has been out of whack, man. I'm telling you, I've been going to sleep at like 3 a.m. and waking up at like 11 a.m.
Basically the same. So, like, on the boat, I had this habit to where I would eat breakfast, come back to the room, go to sleep, wake up like a few hours later, go eat lunch, come back, go to sleep. So now, like, I was very lazy. I pretended like calories just didn't exist.
Those are international calories. Those are roaming calories. They don't count, right?
Roaming calories. I love it. That's great. Yeah, I just pretended like they didn't exist, and now I'm on this intermittent sleep schedule where I'm going to bed at like 11, and I'm waking up at. For the record, we went to Alaska. We sailed out of Seattle. We live in Kentucky and Ohio, respectfully. It was a 3-hour, at one point a 4-hour time difference. So it really messed us up.
Yes, it did.
So yeah, I'm doing this whole thing now where I'm waking up at like 2 a.m. and I'm up for a couple hours and I'm going back to bed. And I don't know, man. I'll get it straightened out soon enough. But today, that is the topic of discussion. We're looking at students sleeping in class and how to deal with it. So, to kind of preface this conversation, I think that we kind of have to sometimes remember what it was like for us to be students. Wes, did you ever sleep in school yourself that you remember?
Unless I was like sick, I don't remember falling asleep in class. Not really.
I know I did, but very seldom. Very, very seldom. And the biggest reason is I don't understand how people get comfortable on a desk with their head down. I'm the stiffest human alive. And me bending down, then it was bad enough. Now I've got a bit of a gut on me, a bit of a belly. So, like, dude, I dropped my phone on the plane. I didn't think I was ever going to get it.
You were like, it belongs to Delta now. Like, this is Delta's phone.
It's Delta's phone. I'm never getting it back. I tried every way in the world. For the record, I also fell down the stairs like a few months ago, and I think I've got a cracked tailbone. So, like, I couldn't lean really because it hurt. I couldn't bend over because my gut and the seat in front of me was arguing for real estate. Like, I just couldn't. I was like, well, this phone's just, I'll have to wait until we land, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't see how people bend over and put their head on a desk. I mean, I can't stand up straight and touch my toes. Like, I can't without bending my knees.
I can't come close.
Can you?
No.
No, nowhere close.
I can touch my toes sitting down. Like, I can stretch my legs out and touch my toes.
Oh, no, I can't. My knees come up to my chin. I try to do that.
I can do that, but I cannot touch my toes from standing up.
Yeah, so I don't understand how people get comfortable. But I wasn't much of a sleeper. But you know, like you were just saying, there's times where it's like you felt bad, had a rough night. There was extenuating circumstances that at the time would have caused you to sleep in class, right? And that probably says a lot about a lot of our students. Now, not all of them, right? Not all of them. There's some of them that they just sleep because they just don't. Let's be real. They just don't care. They don't care about what you have to say. It's like every day. It's like, oh, I can't wait to get to Mr. Howard's class because nap time, baby. Or sometimes maybe it's my fault. Maybe the lesson just sucks. Maybe it's just boring. You know, I'm not going to pretend like I'm always the most interesting person in the world. Right? It happens. Um, so you do have those chronic sleepers. Like every day they're coming to your bell, and then you talk to other teachers, and they're like, "Oh man, I wish they would sleep. Like they're chaos in here. Like they're up and I'm like, well, that's why they're sleeping in my room. Then they're just exhausted from your room.
Or they're building up that energy for your room at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what it is. I was like, man, stay with Bill. I'm going to be doing sprints. You got to get me a nap
Yeah.
in. So in your class, do students sleep a lot? Do you see a lot of sleepers?
Um, I would say that it is more rare than like common, but we have sleepers.
Let's say typical day, class size 25. How many of them by the end of the bell have been asleep at some point?
One or two, not every day,
Okay.
not every day, but one or
Okay.
two.
No, same. I would agree. Yeah, couple. There's usually a couple that at one point had to be awoken. Like, yeah, I agree. And I think that sleeping is something in classes is very uh it's disagreed upon a little bit in terms of how you handle it
Absolutely, I
in
think pedagogically, like a lot
among
of people have
teachers.
a lot of different opinions about it, a lot of different takes.
You have teachers that they find it insulting. How dare you sleep in my
Hmm.
class? Right? You're here to learn, which I mean, yeah, true. But then you have the people on the other end. I don't care. You go to sleep. That's on you, kind of thing.
Yep, take ownership of your own
Just
actions.
yeah, sort of. Where would you find yourself? You think on that spectrum of sleep authority?
I'm definitely not the biggest authoritarian. I will tell you that. I mean, I'll usually typically wake them up, and obviously case by case basis is how I would address it. But sometimes, I mean, they having a hard time, having a hard day. I'll let them sleep through it. But most of the time, they're getting woken up. So.
Yeah, I'll usually come around and try to like wake them up. Like, okay, let's say you try a couple times. Like, hey, you need to get up. You need to listen. They raise their head up. They listen. Boom, back to sleep. You do that like twice as you're going around. Do you continue? What do you? How do you
That
handle it?
typically, in from my experience, that becomes a conversation that we have to have after class, and that might be like a we may need to speak to the counselor about what's going on, or we may need to send an email home and be like, "Hey, they're sleeping. Is everything okay?"
Yeah, especially if it's something that's just out of character.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. If it's happening all of a sudden. Now, if they are frequent sleepers and we've sent that email home, the concern email, hey, just making sure that everything's okay and things like that, and the family replies with, yeah, everything's good here. They're just staying up playing video games because we have a few of those.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
We have a
get it.
few of those. Then
Yeah, same.
obviously it's a consequence, right? We're going up our tiers. We're going up our tiers of consequences. So if it's a repeat offense, the first time I usually let it slide.
Yeah, it's like this is going to be a conversation at this point. Like we'll talk about it,
Yeah, and we have
right?
that in our tier one. Like it would be a conference with student, right? And that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever have now? This is going to be a controversial one. All right, this may be one you may not want to admit publicly. I don't know. All right, have you ever had a student that is just so poorly behaved, just such a disruption that if they go to sleep, you've just let them sleep because you know that if you wake them up, it's just going to be chaos and it's going to be very difficult to teach the rest of the class.
I honestly can say I have not done that. Honestly, can say that I have not done that one.
I have had one. I will admit I have had one student that was so difficult that they did fall asleep one time, and a couple of the kids was trying to wake them up. They're like, "Hey," I'm like, "No, just let him sleep. Just let
For
him
this
sleep.
one time,
Just I need this. He needs this. We all need this." He was extremely difficult, and I guess it was one of those times where it's like, yeah, we can have a conversation about it later. We can talk about it later, but I know that for the good of the class, I know that if and for your own well being, if I wake him up, it's going to be a power struggle. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be this can be a situation that we'll need to talk about privately, one on one, when everyone else is gone, and it's not going to be a thing, right? And I think that that's when it comes to sleeping students. It's a case by case basis,
yeah.
right? It's not a one size fits all kind of
No, and
thinking.
I feel like that's a very common misconception that a lot of teachers have is like, and I understand you want to be fair, right? And I talk about this all the time. Like fair and equitable are two completely different things.
Yes.
Um, and so like you want, I understand you want to be fair, and if the rule is no sleeping in class, then everyone should be following that rule. But not everyone has the same like deck of cards handed to them, right? Like everyone has different
Yeah.
situations. And I think our students understand that. Like most of the time, when we have a student in a situation like that and they have their head down and they're sleeping, most of the time, my students also know, like, hey, they need this. Like, it's not an issue of like, well, they get to sleep. Why can't I? At least that's my
Yeah.
experience most of the time.
I think in the past I've had things like that, but not with sleeping. I've never had someone be like, well, they're asleep. I've never really had that. So at my school, they have, and I don't know if the kids, like, they have this Facebook page called like Caught Sleeping, where they will post pictures of their peers that are sleeping on Facebook. So there's a handful that will like straight up not sleep because they know that somebody will take a picture of them. Now, this isn't something we promote. This is something that's entirely like something that the kids do. Um, and it's something that's uh, social pressure in a way, is like some people they won't go to sleep because they know that someone's going to post a
I've
picture
never
of them.
heard of this. That is very interesting.
Yeah, like like they're like, oh, they'll post a picture. Like I've just heard them mention it before, just kind of to each other in passing. I've heard them say things like, oh, they'll post it on the Caught Sleeping, like on the Caught Sleeping page. Yeah, they do that stuff.
Interesting.
It's yeah. So, and it's not for good reasons. Okay, it's not because it's like you need your education, you should stay awake. That is not the case. It is literally just to bother people or to annoy people or whatever. But yeah, they definitely do those kinds of things. Um, so I know a lot of teachers will engage in some shenanigans when students are sleeping. They'll stack books on their head. They'll take their phone and hide it if it's sitting on their desk. Oh, this is a natural consequence of sleeping. They'll drop a book next to them
Mm-hmm.
on the floor. Boom, makes the big noise. Do you participate? Is that one of your things?
No, I've always thought like it's kind of. I feel like it's kind of a little mean. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm not doing that. I will now. I will. The only shenanigan I guess I'll get into is like if I'm teaching and I'm like talking, I will get next to them and get real loud. I'll do that
Ah,
sometimes.
yeah. Well, that's just good. That's just good pedagogy, though.
Yeah, right. So that's just
Yeah.
proximity control, right?
There you go. That's proximity.
Yeah, throwing out them buzzwords today. So
Those are good words.
yeah.
So it's I don't either. That's not something that I really ever do. Um, though I do think it is. I have to admit, it is kind of funny when when a kid's asleep, you just take everyone out in the hallway. Like, I've heard of people doing this before. I have not. Take everyone else in the hallway and then tell them like it's 3 o'clock. You slept all day.
or have everyone cheer. That's always a good one.
have them cheer.
Yeah, yeah. Have everyone in the room like clap and cheer, and then they wake up. Oh, what's going on? Why am I cheering? Yeah, like
They start cheering as
yeah.
well. I remember when I was a senior in high school, buddy of mine fell asleep in it was like third bell, dude. It was early in the day. Fell asleep, and he wasn't sleeping just like with his head down. He was sleeping. He was a bigger dude. He was sleeping with like his desk was up against a filing cabinet, and his head was against the filing cabinet like this. So he was just sitting in his chair, just normally, and he fell asleep. We were seniors, okay. He wakes up like three bells later in a class full of freshmen, and like looks around, and everyone's different. And he comes back down to sixth bell, and we're all sitting there, and he comes creeping in halfway through the bell. And the teacher, she's like, "Where have you been?" And he was like, "I was sleeping." He just fell. He slept through like three classes.
Oh my goodness. How'd the teacher not like say like wake him up?
I think she just left him sleeping. I think she was just like, whatever. It's like, I mean, she was like the track coach, and he did track. So I thought who knows, she might have been like, yeah, you had a track meet last night. It was late when we got back. Just let the poor
Let
guy
him
sleep.
go, yeah.
I, yeah, I mean, that might have been the case. I don't know. So yeah, it's sleeping is one of those things that is just so highly contested and just debated. Um, my big thing with sleeping is that unless, like you said earlier, it's chronic to a point, and I know the kid, and I know they're for a fact, like, oh, you're doing it just because you don't care, or you. It's like I usually give kids the benefit of the doubt with sleeping.
Mhm.
I usually assume there's something else that's causing it, right? Um, they have a headache, a migraine, they have a cold, they don't feel well. Um, they were up all night doing whatever. They got home late from school and then took care of their siblings until a certain point, and then God forbid they got 2 or 3 hours to themselves at the end of the night to do something they wanted. Right? It, I try to be as human as I can, and try to understand why students are doing what they're
Mhm.
doing, as much as is reasonable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to be, at the very least, um, you have to be empathetic to people's
Oh, I
situations.
completely agree. And I think, like I said, though, if it is a repeat thing, we're doing it multiple times, then we're going to have to start escalating those consequences, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that now you know what? I did have one shenanigan last year. I did forget about this one. Very proud of this one,
Okay.
actually. So I had a kid who had been sleeping a lot. Um, and I'm like, man, like I got to see what's going on. So now remember, I co-taught last year, so there's two teachers in the room. Um, and I just happened to have him like on my schedule, like, oh, I'm going to call the parents at this time. So I go in the middle room. We had another little room there. It's private, and I can make phone call to the parent. I'm talking to the parent. I'm like, yeah, he's been sleeping a lot. We're reading a book. I don't think he has any clue what's going on in this book. I just wanted to let you know and just check, make sure, is there anything going on? Is everything okay? They're like, no, no, everything's fine. If he's doing it just because. And I'm like, okay, I got you. I'll update you on what's going on. So it just so happened to be that he was in that class that was currently in my room. So I get off the phone with the parent, walk into the classroom. He's still asleep. He's asleep now at this
He's in
point.
snooze land
Head,
already.
yeah, head down, just done out. And I'm like, all right, I got to call back now. I have to do this. I have to call back. So we're like listening to a chapter of this book, and we're following along. We were doing like an audio book that day. So I'm like, I know he has no clue what's going on in this book. So what I did was I took a copy of the book, I slipped it into his backpack while he was sleeping, and then I went into the room and called the parent back. And I was like, okay, so here's the deal. He's asleep right now. Okay. I'll wake him up in a little while. But when he gets home, I need you to ask him what happened in chapter 6 of Animal Farm. Okay? When he tells you that he doesn't know, tell him that he has to read chapter 6 of Animal Farm. He's going to tell you that he doesn't have a book. You tell him, yes, he does. It's in his bag. and it worked
That's
perfectly.
awesome.
He, he came in the next day. He just walks over, hands me my book, and I go, "Did you talk to your mom?" He goes, "Yeah." And then he just walked away.
That's good. That's good. Oh yeah, I see. That's another thing. Like I think you probably deal with more sleeping, honestly, in English. Like listening to audiobooks and like reading. Like, dude, I'm not gonna lie. Some of those books that you all read, I would probably sleep on too. I'll be completely honest with you.
I am not a. I teach English, but I am not a canonical English fan. I'm not the Canterbury Tales. I don't enjoy those kind of works. I enjoy more modern. You want to call it theme park literature, whatever you want to call it. The Harry Potters. I enjoy that kind of literature. So when you start getting into that kind of stuff, I will admit I find it sometimes, and I'm honest with kids about it. I'm just like, hey, you want to try to be enthusiastic about things because when you're enthusiastic, sometimes it rubs off on them. But there's sometimes, Lord, there's chapters that are just so dry of these books that you just have to just tell them, hey, listen, guys, we're going to try to find a way to make this as interesting as possible. I'm going to be honest, this one's a little dry. We just have to try to get through it because there's some things we need to know, but it is what it is.
Oh yeah.
Okay. We have to get through it. So, and those may be the chapters that are a little better with audiobooks and rather than just kind of silent reading or partner reading or whatever, because uh, there's some of those chapters where you're like, I know if I tell them just to read it, a lot of them just won't read it because this chapter just is not
It's just
good.
not entertaining.
It's just not entertaining, especially for a 12-year-old. So you got to try to make it as entertaining as possible. We'll do things where we'll draw popsicle sticks or whatever with people's names on it and ask them. Um, I'll stop the recording and ask them, "Hey, can you read the next line? Where are we at?" Just to see that they know where we're at. And
Hmm.
then we've given them like little rewards and stuff, bag of chips or something like. So we've done things like that. Um, and sometimes we just do it just as a check, just to see where you're at. But yeah, no, it can get a little dry. I will admit
Hmm.
sometimes some of those things can get a little dry. So all right. That puts us to 22 minutes. I think that this is an excellent discussion to have. It's something that we all need to be privy to as we move into August. We're all on those summer schedules right now. Students are as well. We're going to have some very sleepy eyed children coming into the classrooms in August. Um, been used to spending their nights playing video games and hanging out on their cell phones. So, hopefully we can find a way to engage them, wake them up, make sure that we are doing our lessons in a way that's as entertaining as possible and as engaging and as active as possible. That's another thing we didn't mention. A lot of times that it's the way that you can handle it is make sure that your lesson just isn't crazy, dry, and boring. You're not talking for
Hey,
45 minutes.
sometimes I end a lesson and I'm like, wow, that was not good. We're not gonna hit it out of the park every time. So
No.
yeah.
Yeah, you do your best with that. So we appreciate you guys for sticking with us. If you could, as always, follow us on Facebook, we are there. You can also find us on all the different all the different podcast websites, including iTunes and Spotify. We do appreciate it. We will see you guys next week on Brothers on the Board when we talk about vacations and teachers. Have an excellent week, and we'll see you next time.